In this episode of the CrossRoads Diner, we're turning the tables and Ken Bailey interviews me, but we had some recording difficulties on the video side. So please try to forgive the herky-jerky nature from time to time on my images. The system just kind of failed us a little bit, but the content is still pretty solid. Here you go. The diner that stands at the crossroads of life, where your spirit goes when it might be time to change your direction. Hey everybody, it's Steve McCurdy. Welcome back to the CrossRoads Diner. Now, last time I interviewed my friend Ken Bailey and got some information from him. Today, he's going to interview me, and we're going to talk about the birth of some things and why we're here. So please welcome my friend Ken. How you doing?
Hey, Steve, I'm doing great, man. Good to be with you again.
Yeah.
And having the tables turned here. I like this.
Yeah, I thought you might.
Hey, let's get right into it, Steve. What is the CrossRoads Diner?
This is born. I did a musical a few years ago called the CrossRoads Diner, and the notion is that as we go through life, our spirit has decision points, and so I decided that the CrossRoad Diner was a diner in a train station at the crossroad of life, where your spirit goes when it might be time to change direction, and you got to take another train. And so what I want the show to be is a place where people can get some ideas about where they are, whether they do need to make a change or not, and the courage to make one that they might feel is the right thing to do, but that they don't otherwise have enough support to feel confident about.
Mm-hmm. Something I've always wanted to ask you, when did you know that you wanted to be on stage or in front of a mic? When did that happen?
I performed in front of my grandmother during the Lawrence Welk show every Saturday night. But when I got into school, we had this Christmas program that the school did, and I don't know why. I couldn't read yet, really. But my first grade teacher insisted that I be the MC. And, we went all the way through sixth grade. First grade.
Wow.
And so she had this speech and transition and all these things that she, taught me by rote, including all the teachers' names, the principal's name, the music teacher's name, all those things, and little transitions between songs so that I could introduce, this is Mrs. Powell's second grade, and they're going to sing Frosty the Snowman. And so I got there, and it was, KFRO was an old station. Everything in it was old. It was a 1930s studio, and they hadn't upgraded it much. And so I walked in there, and the kids got up on the risers, and it was it was a studio. It had a piano, and it had risers, and it had microphones on big booms, and they put me on a box so that I could get up high enough to see out the window to get the guy when he cued me. Mm-hmm. And my heart was pounding. I was so excited, and everybody was excited, and they gave us a countdown. And the light went on the air, and he cued me, and I looked around, and everybody was frozen. Everybody was deer in the headlights. and I thought, dude, this is up to me. This is dead air. I can't let this happen. And so I launched right into it, and that warmed everybody up. And the show went, and we went for about 28, 29 minutes, and they did the wrap it up thing.
Right.
And I did the tag and the out, and the light went off, and everybody cheered. And I just felt like, okay, I'm home. This is where I need to be.
Yeah. Wow. What an experience to be.
Yeah.
So you suddenly went from being afraid to
well, I didn't know to be afraid until everybody else was afraid.
I see.
I was like, okay, I'm gonna do the thing. And I turned around, and the grown-ups were. And so I thought, oh man, okay, well, I don't know anything to do but to do it. So that's what I did.
That's great. What a pivotal moment in your life. I mean, to know that. Did you get any laughs?
Not really, because they didn't know what they were doing, but and they weren't listening to me much. But the old engineer that had set things up, he came in as everybody was filing out, and he looked at my teacher, Mrs. Curry, and he said, "This kid's a natural." And
wow.
I knew that was a good thing. and that just kind of added to it. And she said, yes, he is. So
what happened after? I mean, how did you look for opportunities? Did you just sit back and wait for the next big for the phone to ring? Or
well, the next thing that happened was they had a talent show at school, and I didn't have any talent, so I wanted to be in the show. So I grabbed a couple of my buddies, and we decided we would lip sync the Alvin and the Chipmunks Christmas song.
Yeah.
And we won the competition, and a guy from the YMCA came over and said, look, we have lunches and all the time, and we need entertainment. So you guys want to work with us? And we said, yeah. And so they got us black shirts with Alvin and Simon, Theodore, and David.
Really?
Yeah. And so on days when they had a gig, they would let us know the day ahead. We'd wear that to school. They would send a car for us.
Oh,
and we would all get excused from class, and we'd go get in the car. We'd go drive up the hill, which was right next door. And we'd do our thing for the lunch thing, and then they'd bring us back, and everybody thought we were gods.
Did they feed you?
They fed us, yes.
Wow. So that was your first gig where you got right.
Yeah.
Wow, that's so great. Did you
I was an AL player at lunch.
Wow, that's just so great.
And then nothing. And then nothing. You know.
And then nothing. Wow.
Nothing for the longest time. And then when I got to high school, I learned about speech class was really drama. Mm-hmm. And I was in every show I could be in.
Mm-hmm. So they started casting you, and so you started going out for everything.
Yeah, I ended up being president of the Thespian Club, and also in town we had a community theater. It was across the street from the high school, and they had a group called the Backstagers, and I worked on a lot of shows, and actually, came up with the $20 to become a member, and my best friend did too, and we were the only teenagers that were members of the Backstagers and it was a very cool thing for me.
So it was, so you had this hiatus without doing things, and then suddenly you're back on stage, and intentionally, and you're paying your dues literally, and
right.
and also I'm sure you got a lot of the grunt work backstage, and
oh yeah, I wrote a lot of things back then about the power in the dark. When you're working props or something, and you're not the person that's seen, but you're making things happen. You're making the magic happen. You're the wizard behind the curtain.
Behind the curtain, literally. Yeah.
Yeah, literally. There's something about being part of that secret that everybody knows. I mean, nobody was fooled. Nobody, but you do create, you support the suspension of disbelief. And there's something about that teamwork of being a part of doing that, and the audience going, okay, yeah. Don't screw it up. Because if you pop that bubble, I'll feel it. But as long as you keep the bubble going and you do it well, I'll buy into it. I'll suspend my disbelief. And there was something about that I found very powerful, real sense of community there.
You, when you're in the first grade and the engineer cues you, and you realize you're there and you have to do something, that's a sense of that I kind of can be so energizing, especially afterwards. In fact, I find you can be incredibly drained after something like that. It's amazing how you're running so fast and it can be so draining. But then you go in high school, you're being completely intentional about this, and that's a whole nother energy, I think. I'm guessing. And then you've got the dynamic of all that time when you're backstage. Everybody's backstage during the rehearsal process until the audience gets there.
Right.
And so what do you remember about that time when you when the audience arrives? How does that complete the picture to you?
Well, that is kind of there is a transition there. You're prepping and all that stuff, and it's silent. But when you start hearing that rumble out
Right.
in the house, and you know that there are people there, and then you start realizing the responsibility you have to the theater company and to those people to deliver on their expectation. And and you've only got so much that you're in control of, but you can completely control how much you help everybody else get their job done. And it's, I don't know, there's a you have to turn loose because you can't do it all. You have to trust everybody else. It's like a trust fall in many ways. You just, when the time comes, you just go. You just just go, and you trust that the preparation was well thought out and was on the mark, and the stuff that didn't get laughs in rehearsal because there was no audience, the timing's going to all be different because the audience is a volunteer player that's ad-libbing throughout the show that you prepared.
That's right. Oh, that's great. Yeah, absolutely
and
true.
So you've got to interact with that. You've got to be on your toes.
Did anybody now when you're backstage every night you have the same responsibilities and it's kind of doing the same thing over and over again and everybody's counting on you. When you step into the spotlight, that changes, but did you have an early role when you were actually acting rather than how did you get from backstage to on stage? How did that happen?
Decided, the community theater decided to do a production with teenagers, and they had me and my best friend recruit people from the drama department to do Scrooge at Christmas. Oh, and and they cast me as Scrooge, and him as the narrator. He was this tall, lanky guy with his incredible bass voice. It was perfect. And all the friends that we had came and joined in, and we had just integrated schools, and I had my first black friend, and he played Marley, and he and I it was Cosby and Culp, which only a few people will remember. But the chemistry was excellent. And I was so made up with the gray hair and all this and the old age stuff that my mother had brought my stepfather, who was anti-theater, anti-everything, and my grandmother, who was pro-Stevie everything. And, it was an opening soliloquy and a bunch of things, and then Bob Cratchit comes in, and my grandmother kept poking my mother going, "When's Stevie going to be on?" And she said, and she said, "That's him." And she went, "That old man?" She said, "Yeah." So we got to the end of that show, and of course she gave me big hugs and all that stuff in the lobby. And my crotchety, difficult, negative stepfather said, "Okay, I can see why you like this so much." That's the only encouragement he ever gave me.
Wow. How many performances do you remember?
We did 2 weekends, two Friday, Saturday, Sunday weekends at Christmas time, first 2 weekends in December. And it was really, really very good. Because Peter and I had done so much, and because Cecil, the guy who played Marley, brought that focus also, and because he was black, we put makeup on him that made him look blue, and a blue black ghost under those lights was incredibly powerful. And because we started the show and we were so serious, everybody else just kind of came up to that. And it was a very, very good production.
It sounds, I want to see it in my mind projector right now. So how did you get so now you're on stage. Yeah. You're taking bows at the end, and people are being kind. Every performance is, one of the things about multiple performances like that, I don't know if people ever ask you, in any of your performances over the year, do you ever get tired of doing the same show over and over?
Those runs were too short to get tired of, really.
Yeah. But isn't it interesting that every show, I think one of the surprising things is the difference of every show that you...
and the temptation you have when this audience doesn't react like that audience did, to try to figure out, right. You become divided. And you are saying, well, what am I doing wrong? Or how can I get them to do this? And you have to get rid of that.
Right.
You have to get rid of that and play what's happening now. And some folks never learn that, and are always dissatisfied with the production because they set an expectation. And when that expectation doesn't happen, the fact that it's a success in other ways disappears.
Right.
And that's what a long run or a longer run or multiple run can teach you, is that this audience is completely unique. They won't be here tomorrow night. And no two shows that you do are exactly alike.
Right. Well, how does all that translate into what you're doing now?
Well,
wait a minute. Before you tell me that, tell me about now we have you on stage. And you found the magic of theater.
Yeah.
And so I guess you just and you were in high school, so the next transition would be college. So did you pursue drama in college? Did you become you were already head of the thespians and all that. Did you go to a school that was big on theater and followed that to Broadway?
No. My parents wouldn't support that at all. They wouldn't support anything radio, TV, film, theater, none of that. And in the spring of my senior year, I decided I was going to stay there, going to Kilgore Junior College and get some basics out of the way. And I thought, well, if I got to have a job, I'd rather have it at a radio station. So I started applying to all the radio stations, which we only had 3. We had KFRO, which I started in. And it was an easy listening, very gray audience kind of thing. We had a top 40 station, KLUE, which was really, really cool. And then we had the country station out on the road to Gilmer. And the guy who owned that was my scoutmaster. So I thought, worst case, I can probably get that job. But I wrote letters to all of them, nothing. So I just went downtown to KFRO, where I knew where it was, and walked in the door and walked upstairs. And the night guy was, on the air, and I walked down that hall where I'd been as a 6-year-old, and I was now 18.
Okay.
And I looked in the studio where I had stood. Same microphone is still there, same box that I stood on, and I hear this, this kind of, and I turn around, and the disc jockey's going, "Hey, what's up?" And so I told him I said, "Look, I want to be in radio. I don't know how to get started. I don't know. Can I watch you?" And he was flattered by that. And so he let me watch several nights, quite a few. And my parents even allowed me to go downtown and, borrow the car. I had to be home and in bed by 10, which I know sounds ridiculous, but that was the rule. So I'd leave there about 9 or 9:30, get home. When you're a senior, you don't have a lot of homework. Everything's kind of wrapped up anyway. So it was pretty easy to do. And I kind of got cocky about it. And I went down one night and he just got fed up with me and said, "Look, you need to not be in here. I need to concentrate." So I'm walking down the hall feeling dejected and wondering what I was going to tell my parents because I was going to be coming home early. And we had this closet that had a teletype in it. And so it was insulated because their racket is
right.
But it had a glass door and you could read what was coming up without opening the door. And it was going ding, 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 ding. Normally, like weather alerts were 1 ding and, bulletins were 3 and emergencies were 5. This was constant. And I saw the story coming up and I said, I've got to tell him about this. And I ran back into the control room, and the control room was set up. The big, thick door went into a little kind of a passageway with a half wall where all the records were in it. So it was sound insulated a little bit. And you come around that, and there's the disc jockey looking out the window. And I rounded it. He was on the air. He was finishing a tag for a Sears spot or something. He switched off the mic. He says, "You don't ever come through that door when that thing is on, and I've kicked you out of here." And I said, "Stan, shut up." And he said, "You don't talk to me." I said, "Martin Luther King has been shot." Everything stopped.
Wow.
And he looked at me and he went, okay. And he ran down the hall, got the copy, broke into the record, read the bulletin, turned it off. And I started out the door and he said, "McCurdy, where are you going?" I said, "You kicked me out." He said, "No, we're doing bulletins every 15 minutes on this. You pull them and we'll alternate. I need another voice."
Wow.
And so we alternated, and I became the, KFRO news director that evening. And, this is what we're talking about. Martin Luther King's been shot and everybody's upset about it. And so, I sounded like Mickey Mouse. It was everything I could do to force my voice down. But that was my first on-air experience. And then I started applying to KLUE, and I got on the phone and cornered the disc jockey that was the production manager, and he agreed to see me. They had already hired a new night guy. That night guy was going into the Army. So I thought, shit, I missed the cycle, and he didn't work out. And so they called me and said, "You still interested?" And yeah. And I worked for him all the way through the first year and a half of college. And then when I got to college, I worked at a couple of radio stations there and on weekends. But the girl that I was dating, who I ended up marrying, didn't want me to be involved in theater, didn't want me involved in radio. And so I went into the Air Force so that they'd be telling me what to do for 3 or 4 years and paying me. And it took me 10 years. I did 10 years without radio, theater, television, nothing.
Wow. How did you get back?
The day that we left divorce court, I walked into a theater and auditioned, and I did 2 years of every show they were doing, either backstage or on stage, and ended up becoming a director.
My goodness.
And I knew I was home that night.
Did you do any more radio?
Yeah, I've done a lot of radio off and on. You and I had the Neon Fish, and that was a lot of fun. That was a great show. The fact that we've got this now where you can create a show, we may have a listener at this point in time. I don't know. But the fact that you can have an outlet, and if you can create it, if you can build it, and market it, maybe they'll come.
Right. So what are you doing? Do you feel an obligation? Sometimes I do. Do you feel an obligation when you've had this kind of these frequent blessings in your life, these frequent things that happen, when you come to these crossroads that the diner is all about? Are you to a point in your life where you want to start putting those things together? Are things making sense to you that hadn't before?
Yeah. So when I was in the Air Force, they made me a trainer. When I got out and went to work for Merrill Lynch, they made me a trainer. When I went to work for the first independent company, a home builder, they made me a trainer. And at that point in time, videotape, half-inch videotape became available. People had camcorders and stuff, and I learned how to edit that stuff. And I did training programs with video. And then later I just quit that and started my own production company and worked for lots of different companies instead of just doing training and some of that time being video production. It was all that for different companies at different times. And I was so at home. I wrote because I didn't want to share that money and I wanted it to be creative. I wanted it to be stuff that was a new approach and it would stick, that what you were training would stick because of the context. And so, looking back, and then I had kids and I raised them and I tried to support them in whatever gift that they had been given, and said, it's going to be rough. You're going to fail. You're going to fail a lot. And it's only through those failures that you're going to, grow and learn. And none of those failures will it end. your desire and your capability won't end. It'll develop. And nobody's going to say you're out of this business and you'll never work again. And, the Hollywood stuff. And
Right.
So as I've gotten to this stage in my life, I see a lot of people who don't have a lot of support, and they don't have the conviction to say to the people that are not supporting them, I get it. I get that you're afraid. I get you're afraid for me. I get that you want this, that you just don't want me to be hurt. And you don't know how this would work. And so you don't think I would know how it would work. And I get that.
Wow.
And so what I am going to do is, I am going to try, because I would rather try, fail, hate it, than live my life comfortable making a lot of money as a, pick a thing, wallpaper hanger, and always wonder what it would have been like. It might have been is the greatest curse anybody can live with. I say, and that's, the generation difference between the generation now and ours. Our generation was raised by a generation that went through the Depression, and they were about accumulate good stuff, get a good house, get a good car, buy quality, wait, pay cash. And so we ended up trying to get resumes. We wanted to have, resumes of good stuff, gold watch and all that stuff. This generation wants to have experiences. And I want to encourage that. And I want to encourage them to fail and to try again and to learn from that, and to not measure their success by what they're doing, but by who they are in whatever they're doing, and to be themselves, and to honor that gift that they, or that hunger. Because, I've been with a lot of people who wanted to be on stage, and then when they get, like you said, when they get into the 8th or 9th or 10th show, they're ho-hum, oh gosh, got to go do this, and they don't have the fire, and it's okay. Go do something else, and mess with it until you find it.
Find the fire. So you're directing them to the fire. Sounds
I'm giving them an opportunity to excel elsewhere.
Wow, that's great. Wow, that's so interesting.
But that's what I want. That's what I want, Ken, for the diner to be. I want the diner to be an encouragement to search yourself, and to listen to the stories that I did with you, and that the ones that are coming in the coming weeks that I've done with a lot of people that are actors and filmmakers and things like that. But I'm going to eventually be doing it with accountants and everybody who finds their passion. To say, what drove you? What lit that? How did you know? Was it a question? How did you confirm that? Tell me about the failures. Tell me about the struggle. Tell me about what you learned from that. Tell me what you think that you might do differently. And everybody that I've asked, what would you have done differently? Is they said, I would listen to my gut sooner.
Wow.
Everyone except you has said that, because I think you've always listened to your gut. I think you've always gone, what can, I think I'd like to try this.
I keep marveling at how many times, how many things in our lives have been so similar. The whole transition from high school to college, I had the same kind of pressures that you did from parents. And I think that also speaks to the generational thing you just talked about where their worries were and how they wanted to equip us to be what their version of successful or whatever that looked like, or not to fail, actually.
Yeah, they were afraid of failure. They were afraid failure would be terminal.
Is there another word for fail? Because I think, when you say, I want you to fail, I was just thinking that's
it's not very friendly wording. What I want is for them to survive a disappointment, to have an expectation, not have it be met, and find a benefit in it. that was not the one they were expecting.
Yeah, I kind of equate it to, with GPS now, you've got so much guidance and direction that's just amazing. And back when you had key maps and all that, before GPS,
You made discoveries.
you would, yeah, and you ran into dead ends and all those things, but it didn't mean you weren't still on the way to going where you were going. You know what I'm saying? That you may reroute, or it's kind of like in the GPS where it used to say rerouting. And I think that's what I'm hearing CrossRoad Diner is that it's saying that rerouting is not failure. It's just we got to keep trying these different paths, and then we
exactly.
We
you and I are from Houston, and that's the home of NASA. And when a moon launch, you're talking about the greatest journey mankind has ever been on. When they planned it, there are places where they will change course, where they will check where they are, where they want to go, and do a mid-course correction. And they come up on an they expect to be off course at that point in time. They expect to have to check. They expect that what they thought and knew was missing some information. And that using the information they had at the time, they set out on the journey. And at this point, we're going to check and see where the heck we actually are, and make a correction to get to where we're wanting to be. I think if we were taught that as humans in our educational process and our career building process, because what do you want to be when you grow up? Well, everybody wants to be a fireman when they're 5, but they want to be something else later, and then they start and they decide to change. We are constantly evolving. What I want to be when I grow up is me.
Yes.
For the longest time, I wanted to be somebody cooler than me, and I tried to be those people.
Yeah.
And
that's right. Me too.
And it took me a long time to realize that whoever it is that you are, it's the coolest person you're going to be. And if you do that authentically, you'll do it with less stomach acid.
Yeah. Yeah. I think finding the cool is, when you find that, you become so attractive to other people, friends and wives and all those things that happen because and the satisfaction of putting your head on that pillow, knowing tomorrow I get to get up and go on an adventure of my own making, that taking me in a direction that that I get to drop in at the CrossRoads Diner and look at the menu, look out the window, see the roads, and sit there and take a break, have a little iced tea, and figure out where we're gonna head our nose of the car when we leave here. We may have been going one way, and now after sitting there for a minute and talking to the folks at CrossRoads Diner, I may go another direction.
Well,
when I
here
go out
I am
that
at this
door.
age, and I'm relaunching my speaking career, and it's about authenticity and figuring out who you are and being yourself. So the show is an extension of that, but I also hope to be in colleges and in businesses helping people do a reality check and a courage check and an adventure casting. What do I want? Because all of us continue to evolve. I got a chance this summer to play a very angry old man in a little short film. And when his wife died, he decided to just quit living. And a young high school kid who gets an assignment to go talk to an old person and get their story and come back and report it. And this kid sees the cool things this old man did when he was alive. He's got a 1952 Buick in the garage that he still got, and he won't give the kid the story until he goes and turns it over and lets it run for a while. And the kid ends up stealing the car, kidnapping the old guy, and driving him around town until he makes a decision to live again, or that he's still alive. And it was so wonderful to have that opportunity to see that we're always at a choice point. And it's up to us.
Yeah, and when your grandmother was there, third row center, and when are we going to see Stevie? That kind of resonates with this. Is that you were playing this role with all the Scrooge makeup, and where's Stevie? And your whole life since then and now, you're kind of taking it on as an assignment is to take the makeup off, let her know where Stevie is, and that how much Stevie's loving, putting the makeup on and playing the role, but letting, winking to her and say, hey, this is who I am.
Well,
so
you are a great writer.
Yeah,
you have wonderful characters in your books. And you and I have talked about the writing process and how the character starts telling you don't write that dialogue. You listen to them and you try to catch it as quickly as you can. They speak through your spirit to you, and they are dimensions of yourself, and they're parts of you that you allow yourself to explore safely in a fictional world where nobody real is going to get hurt. And all of those things are things that inform you about yourself as a writer, and same thing with actors doing characters, because your wife is a marvelous actress. And she's done some of the same shows several times. And as she has done them, they have evolved and changed. The performance of that character this year is so different from the performance of that character when she was 32. Because she is so much more of a human being than she was then, and can bring more to it, often by bringing less, working less hard. Will
writing be any part of your process at CrossRoad Diner?
Yeah, I think there's a nonfiction book that's going to come out of it that addresses these points.
Because I just was dealing with something, and I was talking to somebody who's somebody I very much respect and who's very smart and in a particular field. And I was giving him what I thought was sort of a new direction, and just the two of us were kind of talking about this, and it wasn't that it didn't land. He was very gracious and kind to me, but I left there thinking he's not going to do what I'm talking about, and I don't want to do what I'm talking about. I don't want to start a huge thing, but I thought, I can write. What's so cool is I can write a story about somebody that does what I'm
that crap
talking
out of your
about,
system.
and I can make it come out.
Yeah,
it's so true that I can do that. And so I'm thinking that if there's anywhere in this process of the CrossRoad Diner where people can, sort of role play or something, I don't know what, but I know for me, it's just so great to be able to create a character and let them go on that adventure. And, if they fail, they fail, idea. but it's still an adventure.
You're always coming up.
It's been great.
Thank you so much for participating and helping. And we hope that we hope you got something out of it, and that whatever it is that is calling you, that you will heed it and give it some respect and some consideration. And that if we can help you, come back and do that at the CrossRoads Diner. For Ken Bailey, I'm Steve McCurdy. See you next time. So the CrossRoads Diner is for you, a place where you can hear the journeys of others, get some insight into your own, along with some encouragement and maybe a little self-forgiveness. Please give our channel a like and consider subscribing. Next Monday, it's Houston's AD Players Theater artistic producer Kevin Dean in the CrossRoad Diner. See you then.